Hello, Jakarta and the world. This is White Trash Talking. I'm Doug Johnson, and I'll be talking to you about issues relating to Jakarta, the U.S., and the world. As a U.S. citizen now living in Jakarta, I touch on issues relating to the West and the East, the United States and Indonesia, and to world events in general because everything is related and interconnected. Okay, today I will not be joined by my wife, Mita. Instead, I wish to give a brief statement of my views regarding the war in Gaza. I'm very disturbed and worried about what's unfolding and feel a need to say something about it. I'm not a big fan of preaching to the choir, and talking to those other than the choir is a hard conversation to tackle, as most people are not ready to take in a different viewpoint. Many listeners are so entrenched in pro-Israeli propaganda, which really amounts to an almost entirely invented history and a distorted timeline, which promotes a complete lack of knowledge or misunderstanding of the facts on the ground today. What people don't understand is Israel's military occupation of Palestinian territory. This involves armed and aggressive Israeli soldiers cruising the streets daily, harassing and provoking innocent people at gunpoint, causing severe disruptions to traffic flow, blocking children from going to school, defiling holy mosques, breaking into family homes to arrest and imprison family members with no charges ever being filed. It means using U.S.-manufactured heavy construction machinery to demolish home after home with little or no forewarning or justification, all while constructing massive new settlements on Palestinian land. It means building a separation wall throughout the West Bank that divides Palestinian land into zones that operates as Bantustans that restrict free movement from one region to another. This enormous barrier not only encroaches into Palestine to appropriate more land and water and resources for Israel, but negates any possibility of a viable state for Palestine. Israel controls Palestinian borders and airspace, determines who can come and go into Palestine, which foreigners can work there and which must leave. Life in the West Bank is suffocating and demoralizing, and Palestinian residents have little hope of a better future. Mind you, Israeli soldiers are not responding to events in Tel Aviv or West Jerusalem. Rather, they are harassing, intimidating, and disrupting Palestinian families in and around their homes, deep within places like Ramallah or Jenin. This occupation violates international law. In Gaza, the situation is much, much worse. The Gaza Strip is about 140 square miles, about the size of Las Vegas, and has around 2.2 million residents, half of which are children, making it one of the most densely populated places on the planet. To the west of Gaza is the Mediterranean Sea, to the south is Egypt, and along the entirety of the eastern border with Israel is a massive fence, all of which are impenetrable barriers. Gazans cannot enter and cannot leave. The Gaza Strip is effectively the largest open-air prison in the world, and the living conditions inside Gaza, even prior to this current war, is almost inhabitable. Food and water are scarce, healthcare limited, and employment opportunities almost non-existent. Today, as the world watches in horror, Israel is openly committing genocide against the men, women, and children of Gaza. They argue that this is punishment for Hamas's attack on October 7. Collective punishment is against international law and is a war crime. They're telling people in North Gaza to move south or die, which itself is an attack on civilians and thus a war crime. They know that the logistics of such rapid migration is impossible, and the South cannot withstand this influx, not to mention that Israelis have bombed families who were evacuating as ordered, also a war crime. Israel has openly admitted that they have dropped bombs on 3 refugee camps, killing hundreds of innocent people in order to kill single Hamas combatants. Again, a war crime. They have bombed schools, ambulances, public buildings, and now even hospitals where children and babies are clinging to life. Over 10,000 civilians, mostly children, have died so far, and many tens of thousands are seriously injured. All war crimes. They clearly intend to flatten Gaza into complete rubble and kill all of the citizens. Netanyahu has said he will not stop until Hamas is destroyed, and U.S. Secretary of State Blinken has given him the green light. It does not appear that this genocide will stop. This is what I believe may happen soon. 1. Egypt cannot let this humanitarian disaster unfold on its border. It has already amassed troops for possible deployment. 2. Hezbollah will continue to escalate the bombing on Israel's northern border as they too cannot let Israel continue its genocide. 3. Iran and Saudi Arabia may enter this as well, and the two countries are meeting now as I speak. 4. If the U.S. attacks Iran, which Senator Graham is advocating, Russia will no doubt defend Iran. 5. If Israel does not stop bombing and attacking Gaza, we will almost surely have a much wider war, possibly even a world war. I don't say these things lightly. I lived for 3 years in Palestine and have a good sense of what's going on there. Netanyahu is a dangerous lunatic who is clinging to power as he faces a long prison sentence for corruption. He needs this war to stay in power, and he may end up destroying Israel and the U.S. These are extremely dangerous times. Ultimately, in the end, what must happen is this. Israel must end its attack of Gaza. Israel must end the occupation of Palestine. They must tear down and remove the separation wall that imprisons Gaza and the West Bank. And they must recognize and acknowledge that Zionism is not Judaism. They must rewrite their constitution to include all religions and races as equals in a one-state solution. This won't be easy, but the alternative is the imminent destruction of Israel, which I must make clear is not something that I want. Thank you very much for listening.